Hello everyone, welcome back. Let's see what else all we are going to learn in this lesson. The lesson is about online surveys. Let's take a look at the table of contents of the lesson. 1. Online surveys, benefits of surveys, best practices for developing online surveys, creating questions, planning surveys, structuring surveys, choosing question types, writing questions and options, styling for the surveys, and publishing surveys. Let's take a look one by one. Let's understand what is online survey first. Like online survey can be given on computer, mobile, or any devices which can be accessible through touchscreen or through the internet. So which is available online itself. So in your case, you have given multiple surveys like in the malls, in the showrooms, or in anywhere, wherever if you go for shoppings or like going for or if anyone people comes to your home for the voter surveying or for government surveys, there are many type of surveys which they ask you questions and for the multiple answers you just provide any one answer for them. So it's nothing but a survey. Let's see what it means by practically. An online survey is a structured questionnaires that your target audience completes over the internet, generally through a filling out a form. So as I said, it's nothing but making a question structure and providing multiple answers and providing them on the internet for the people who can give the answer, like we call them as a target audience. Next, online survey can vary in the length and the format. Yes, the data is stored in a database and the survey tools generally provides some level of analysis of the data in addition to review by a trained expert. Like as I said, once you provide your details to any people or any in the mall or anywhere wherever you provide information, that is called as a data which gets stored in the database of a survey database. Then a person who is trained expert, he just reviews the data whatever they had got from the target audience, then out from the data he just gets the information and makes any product or a software or the any product where whatever you have gone for buying, it can be get be more improved. So that's why we take a survey. Let's take a look on benefits of surveys. Unlike traditional surveys, online surveys offers companies a way to collect information from a broad audience for very little cost. When conducting an online survey, you have an opportunity to learn like who users or who your users are, what your users wants to accomplish, what information your users are looking for. Next, when to conduct an online survey. You can conduct an online survey at any stage of the development process. Like before a site redesign, you learn about current users and what they are trying to accomplish. After launching a new or revised site, you can learn if your new design meets the needs of users and identify areas for improvement. When you want to have content or features related or ranked, you can conduct ongoing surveys to gain ideas for future improvement. So this says that we can do any time of service while development process. Like If you want to do a survey in between of your site redesign, then we can do that. Only thing you need to know what is all you need to ask, or depending on your survey answers or the feedback or the data, you can improve your entire design which has been made for the target audience. Next, take a look on best practices for developing online surveys. Before creating an online survey, you should identify your purpose, where you will find a response, the software you will be using, how you will collect the data, and any limitations to information collection, who will analyze the data. But before creating any online survey, we should know that our purposes should be clear. For what purpose you are going to do the survey, then who are going to, or where you will find, like if you want your data, then who, like the survey needs to be do from the students or the employees who are professional, or the engineers or the doctors, depending upon the field. So you need to give the response. Then to create a survey, we are going to use such some softwares, like online softwares we have like Google Analytics or Monkey Survey, and many they are. Then we should keep a limitation to collect the information. After that, who will analyze the data? There should be a proper analyzer who is going to analyze the data. Next, once you outline those basic, you need to consider the following. Keep your survey as brief as possible. Provide the participants with an estimate of completion time up front, as well as something that indicates their progress. Include a mix of open-ended question in which user complete the answer and closed question. Ask if a respondent is willing to answer more in-depth question in a flow-up survey or interview. It says that keep your survey as brief as possible. So never jumble your survey questions. So better it is to brief it before you start your survey. Or if you are making any questions, then make it a very simple which any user can understand. Or before starting the survey, give a brief introduction for a user. So whenever a user wants to do a survey, so that best practices give a progress. Show a progress for the user when any user is going to attend the survey. Show upfront that the survey is going to finish in so and so minutes or hour, that the user will get a clear picture that how big the survey is going to take a time. So better it is a show progress bar or a time. So include a mix of open-ended questions, like a user can skip the question or answer the question. So never restrict a user to answer for every question. If a user is going to answer, if he or she wants to answer in depth, then ask a question for more depth. Let's see how to create a question. Create your question once you have determined the software and purpose you may want to consider collecting information about. If users are able to find the information they seek, how satisfied users are with your site, what experience users have had with your site or similar site, what users like and dislike about your site, what frustrations or issues users have with your site, if user could recommended your site to others, if users have any ideas or suggestions or improvements. So create such a question that consider these all things into the questions and create the questions. Next, let's take a look on planning surveys. First, plan out what you need to capture. A good survey starts with good planning. List out all the insights and feedbacks that you want to capture and think about how best to do this. Is an online survey even the best approach? Surveys are great for capturing quantitative data, that is, rating and numbers, but not so good for qualitative data. For example, rather than a survey, perhaps you could get more insight from interviewing users instead. Then, identify the survey audience. Part of your survey planning should involve identifying the audience for your survey, along with the device they are likely to be using to fill it out. For example, if your audience is likely to be on mobile, you will need to make sure the survey works well on a small screen. Also consider any qualifying question you might need to ask to ward off any could be participants that you don't want to include. Then, consider how many responses you need. Having identified the survey audience, you will also need to consider how many responses you required and whether you are likely to need to offer some sort of incentives. If you have a very large potential audience, then you might want to plan a simple size. Response rates will of course vary, and a good tactic can be to send out staggered survey invites, either on-site invitations or via emails, which will allow you to monitor response rate and adjust accordingly. Next, capture a mixture of quantitative and qualitative data. Surveys are ideal for capturing quantitative data, but often this will only tell you the what, not the why. It's usually a good idea to capture a mixture of quantitative and qualitative data. For example, you might ask users to rate something and then ask them why they gave their ratings. To reduce the overhead of analyzing qualitative answers, it can be useful to only ask for an explanation when an interesting answer has been entered. For example, a user has selected a high or low rating. Next, do not ask what your analytics will tell you. Now, once you get any answer prior asking the questions, then never put that question again in front of the user. So when you have a sufficient information, so never ask again for the user into the survey. So it says that using analytics tool such as Google Analytics, you can capture a wealth of information about your user without even having to ask them any questions. If your analytics can provide the insight, then there's no need to include their question in your online survey. Next, choose the right survey tool. There are a lot of pre-survey tools available such as Google Form, SurveyMonkey, SurveyGizmo, SurveyTown, and Typeforms. There are many. However, some are paid and some are like free. However, if you want to be able to style your survey, include logic such as skipping questions or selections, or use fancy question types, then you will probably have to pay them. Free survey tools also often limit the number of responses and number of questions per survey. So here we have learned regarding how to plan a survey. So if you consider this all 6 points while creating any surveys or while planning a survey, then definitely will collect a good data from the target audience. So once planning survey is done, let us move to the next. It is structuring survey. In structuring survey, we are going to learn many things. Let us take a look what else all we are going to learn. First, focus on time to complete rather than number of questions. Like for more than 5 or 10 questions, 2 should be aimed. A better consideration is how long a survey is likely to take to complete it. After all, 3 easy to answer questions might be quicker to answer than one complicated one. One list, some survey tool will provide an approximation for time to complete. Piloting a survey will give you a true indication. Next, keep surveys as quick to complete as possible. So never ever make a survey a lengthy. So make it a quick survey to complete it and make it a possible surveys. It gives you the good data. Admit it, no one likes filling out surveys. So keep yours as short as sweet as possible. If you don't truly need to ask a question, don't. As a general rule, the longer a survey takes to fill out, the higher the drop-off rate. Think about what the minimum you can get away with asking is and how you can make your survey as painless to fill out as possible. Next, have a logical flow. If your data is not into the logical flow, then the end audience or the target audience from whom we are collecting the survey, then he will get a confused and nor will answer for the correct data. So, like a good film or novel, your survey should have a logical flow. Avoid continuously jumping from topic to topic and try to cluster related questions together either in sections or on a pages. A good starting point for a survey is usually to capture information about the participants. This also allows qualifying criteria to be captured upfront so that could be participants that should not be filling out the survey can be excluded. Next, keep short survey to one page and break up longer ones. If a survey is quite short, for example 5 questions on less than, try to keep it on the one page. Longer surveys should be broken up into multiple pages so that participants can tackle the survey a section at a time. Labeling pages is usually a good idea. For example, if you are making any questions which are related to about website or about the user, then label to the page as a about us or a personal details or excuse me or favorite hobbies, like anything which are related to the questions. Next, selectively ask for extra information. A good way to minimize selectively ask for extra information. A good way to minimize the time it takes to complete a survey is to selectively ask for extra information. For example, if participants are asked to rate something, then you might only ask for why a rating has been given if a very high or very low rating has been entered. Next, upfront, front load with the most important questions. Along with the certainty of life, death and taxes, there is the certainty that participants will drop off your survey. As I will already mentioned, sorry, I have already mentioned The longer the survey, the higher the chance of drop-off. This is why it's a good idea to front-load a survey with the most important questions. This helps to ensure that you will at least get proper answer to these key questions. Let's see what are the key questions. Next, requiring only key questions. A survey is always about striking a balance between capturing the data you want, which leaves minimizing the work of participants. You should therefore require participants to answer only very key questions. If a question is not key, then either make it optional or don't include in it the first place. Next, spend time on writing a good survey or good introduction. A good introduction can make or break a survey. If you have a very poor response rate and therefore a very few participants, it's probably because the introduction is not doing its job very well. A good survey introduction should outline why the survey is being run. Set explanation such as time to complete, outline any incentives, and of course sell the survey to could be participants. Keep introduction relatively short and make sure that you answer the all important questions. Why should someone fill out this survey? Say thanks or say thank you or spell out any next steps. If someone has invested some of their own time and energy completing your survey, the least you can do is say thank you. Always thank participants at the end of a survey, and if there are any next steps such as results being made available or a price drawn being made, outline when this will be and how participants can stay informed. If someone has been excluded from this survey because he or she does not met the qualifying criteria, you should still thank them for participating their time, as I am sure you will be reminded countless times. Good manner cost nothing. So these are something around four, eight, around 9 points for structuring a survey. Let's highlight this once again. Focus on time to complete rather than number of questions. Keep surveys as quick to complete as possible. Have a logic flow. Keep short surveys to one page and break up longer ones. Selectively ask for extra information. Upfront with the most important questions. Require only key questions. Spend time on writing a good introduction. Say thank you and spell out any next step. So these are something 9 points where you, if you remember for structuring surveys, then a good survey comes up. Let's see what's next. Choosing question or choosing type of questions. So let's see what it says. 1. Use open questions springly. It means like surveys are generally more suited to closed questions. For example, choosing an answer from a list or selecting from a scale, open-end questions can be useful, but can take a lot more time to analyze and for participants to answer. A good compromise is often to ask closed questions. Yes, with an optional open questions to allow participants to provide more information. For example, why he or she selected the answer. Next, choose appropriate question type. Surely tools increasingly support a brilliant number of different question types, for checkbox grades to Dropbox, image, sections, star ratings, and Likert scales. The choices are many, so many different questions, type to choose from, form, sorry, which should you use. A good rule of thumb is to keep it as simple as possible. Basic radio button selections and Likert scale are often all that's required. For help choosing question types, take a look at Survey Gizmo. Excellent advice for choosing survey question type along with their downloadable quantitative question guide. Next, ask for recognition over recall. Next, a front load with the most important questions. Along with the certainty of the life, death and taxes, there is a certain the participants will drop off your survey. As I already mentioned, the longer the survey, the higher the change of drop off. This is why it's a good idea to upfront a survey with the most important questions. This helps to ensure that you will at least get answer to these key questions. Let's move for next. Required only key questions. Let us see what are the key questions. A survey is always about striking a balance between capturing the data you want, wishlist, minimizing Wishlist minimizing the work of participants. You should therefore require participants to answer only very key questions. If a question is not key, then either make it optional or don't include it in the first place. Next, spend time on writing a good intro. A good introduction can make or break a survey. If you have a very poor response rate and therefore very few participants, it's probably because the introduction is not doing its job very well. A good survey introduction should outline why the survey is being run, set expectations such as time to complete, outline an incentive, and of course sell the survey to could be participants. Keep introduction relatively short and make sure that you answer the all important questions. Why should someone fill out the surveys? Let us see. Say thanks you and spell out any next step. If someone has invested some of their own time and energy completing your survey, the least you can do is say thank you. Always thank participant at the end of survey, and if there are any next steps such as result begin made available or a prize drawn begin made, outline when these will be and how participants can stay informed. If someone has been included for form the survey because he or she does not meet the qualifying criteria, you should still thank them for participating for the survey, as I'm sure you will be reminded countless times. Good manner costs nothing. So be polite and say thanks to the user. So this is about all structuring surveys. So keep this point while structuring your surveys. Let's revise once again by one for the points. Focus on time to complete rather than number of questions. Keep surveys as quick to complete as possible. Have a logic flow for each question. Keep short surveys to one page. If it is more, then break up for the longer ones. You can make it for more page. Selectively ask for extra information. Front load with the most important questions. Required only key questions. Spend time on writing a good introduction. Say thank you for every next step for your service. Let's see what's next. Choosing question type. This is an important while making a survey. While if you let's see what else all we required. 1. Use open questions sparkingly. Surveys are generally more suited to closed questions. For example, choosing an answer from a list. Choosing an answer from a list or selecting from a scale. Open-ended questions can be useful but cannot take a lot more time to analyze or for participants to answer. A good compromise thing is often to ask closed questions with an optional open questions to allow participants to provide more information. For example, why he or she selected that answer. For example, why he or she selected the answers. Next, choose appropriate question type. Like survey tools increasingly supports a bounded number of different question types, from checkbox grids to drop-downs, image selection, star ratings, and Likert scales. The choices are many, with so many different questions types to choose from. Which question should you use, or which method should be used? Next, ask for recognition over recall. Along with keeping it simple, another good rule of thumb for choosing question type is to ask participants to select their answers from a list rather than enter it using free text. Of course, it's not always possible or desirable to list all possible answers. If this is the case, then don't forget to provide another option where participant can enter a different answer. You should give a freedom to a user where he can put manual text or he can use a radio button or optional text with the checkbox or the radio buttons. If such a question, if you need a response, then a free text should be given. Next, use radio sections for small list, drop downs for long list. When presenting list of possible answers, use radio sections for small lists, example 10 or less. And drop down or auto loops, that is, participant starts typing and matches are shown for longer list. Yes, never use for radio buttons for long list. Use drop down for long list, and for short list, small list, you can use a radio section. Next, don't present too much options. Try to avoid presenting participants with too much options to choose from, as this can make filling out a survey a long and painful process. Consider using auto lookup to help standardizing free text entry, for example, when entering a country or residence or professions. Next, ensure the single section choose are mutually exclusive. If you are presenting a list of possible answers, consider whether they will be mutually exclusive or not. In other words, should participants be able to select more than one answer? For example, a participant will only ever have one title, Mr., Miss, or Misters, etc. But might have multiple mobile phone numbers, work and professional phone numbers, or etc. It's generally best to use radio options, a radio button, or a drop down for a single selection, and checkbox where multiple sections might be possible. Next, provide a middle point for Likert scale. When asking participants to select from a Likert scale, provide a middle point where possible. This will generally means using a 3, 5, 7, 9 or 11 point scale, that is 0 till 10. A middle point allows those participants that are neither positive nor negative to select a valid answer rather than having to gravitate towards one or the another. Next, avoid radio button grids for mobile. Radio button grids such as a Likert scale rating for multiple items can work very well on a bigger screen but can be devilish difficult to fill out on a small screen. If a lot of your participants are like to be filling out the survey on the mobile, try to avoid radio button grids. Instead, or break down the rows up into separate questions. Next, use pictures wherever as possible. Pictures gives a clear picture instead of a text, like everyone knows. Like from the childhood, we had seen a pictures. Like if you see the pictures, then a picture shows a clear picture, like the result, and it gives a good interesting for learning. So use pictures as wherever it is a possible. Pictures can be a great way to add or aid clarity and comprehension within a survey. For example, using screenshot to help communicate what a question is asking about, or even to present the possible answers to a question. So pictures are good option for more result. Writing questions and options. Let's see what are the process to write the questions with the options. So let's take one look one on one. First, aim for neutral questions. There is a real art to writing good survey questions. They should be clear, easy to understand, and as neutral as possible. Try to avoid introducing any unintentional bias due to the way that a question is framed. For example, rather than asking what do you really love about product XYZ, you might ask how could you rate product XYZ. Survey can have some example of based survey questions to avoid. Next, don't expect people to read instructions. People don't read instructions. True. When it comes to everyday product, and it's certainly true when it comes to survey, this is why it's important to make questions as self-contained as possible rather than providing instruction in the introduction or at the top of a page. Be sure to provide any additional instruction as part of a question or directly below the question text. Next, keep questions and instruction succinct. Keep questions and instructions succinct. Rather than reading all of your finely crafted text word by word, participants are likely to scan the text of an online survey. It's therefore important that questions and any instruction text are kept short and succinct. It can also be useful to highlight keyword and instruction for example by making them bold. Next, only ask one question at a time. If there are multiple questions, then user get confused what to answer or what to not. So better ask one question at a time. It can be tempting to combine questions so that a survey appears shorter. For example, please rate the visuals and functionality. The problem with doing this is that participants don't know which part of a question to answer. It's important to only ask one question at a time. So this example could be better phrased as question 2. Please rate the visual and please rate the functionality. So never combine 2-3 questions in one question. So make it separate and clear. Next, use plain, clear and easy to understand language. Always use plain, unambiguously language for questions. Generally, the simpler the language, the better. If a question is unclear, then you are likely to get participants answering different interpretations. A good way to ensure that questions are clear and easy to understand is to run through the questions with someone to find out how he or she interprets them. So never use unclear language. Use plain text, plain languages. Next, provide examples to help compression. It can often be useful to provide examples so that participants have an indication of the type of answers you are looking for. However, be careful about unintentionally introducing bias with the example used. It's often best to provide a number of examples so that participants don't get fixed or just the one. Next, randomized options where possible to avoid bias. Where you are asking participants to select from a list or from a grid, it's often a good idea to randomizely the order of the list in order to reduce bias. However, if the list has a useful order such as numerical or alphabetical, then you obviously should not randomize it. Next, allow for other or any options. Rather than forcing participants to select at least one item, always consider if you will need to provide others or other or not applicable options. When a other option is provided, it's good idea to capture details via a text box, such as the example, which we see in multiple websites or applications where you can write your own custom message into the survey questions. Next, size text box for expected input. Participants will get an initial idea of the amount of text to enter based on the size of the text box. Therefore, it's important to ensure that text boxes are sized appropriately for the required content. For example, an email text box should be larger enough to easily accommodate a long email address. And if you expected a participant to enter lots of free text, don't just provide a narrow one-line text box. So give it a free space to write and use a text. Next, validate answers where possible. Validate answer Validate answers where possible. Wherever possible, it's a good idea to validate text-based answer within a survey. For example, let's take checking that an email address is in the appropriate format or that a valid date has been entered for a date of birth. So, whenever the validation occurs, that the user will get a clear picture on the spot. So, giving a validation wherever is possible is a good option. So, this is what we had learned the writing questions and options format. Next, let's take a look on styling surveys. Use branding to build trust. In this, it says that important that participants trust the survey put in front of them, otherwise they are unlikely to complete it, aside from creating a professional and well thought out survey. Branding can really help to build trust. It's a good idea to use your company or product branding for a survey and to generally follow good UI practice such as adequate size text, harmonics, color, and good contrast. So never use out of your branding or a company branding survey questions or a style of surveys. Next, emphasizing question text. The question text should be the focus for a survey. So it's a good to make it stand out on the page. For example, by increasing the font size or perhaps by making it bold. Show progress for longer survey. In show progress for longer survey involving multiple pages, it's a good idea to include a progress indicator. For example, the percentage complete. This lets participants know how far into the survey they are and how much time remains. Let's see next. Use question numbers for longer survey. Featuring multiple pages, it can be useful to show question numbers. This gives participants an idea of how much of the survey they have answered. For short surveys of 1 or 2 pages questions, numbers are best avoided. Check styling and usability across devices. Nowadays, when you just had to check that an online survey works well on a desktop browser with mobile and tablet traffic soaring. You should also check that a survey works well on smart screens like mobile or you can say iPad and on touch screens. Large questions grids are best avoided if you are likely to get a lot of mobile traffic, and you might even consider creating a mobile specific version if the survey tool is not very responsive. So this tells that if you want to create any survey for mobile users, then the survey should be a very responsive where every touchscreen user can visit through mobile and use it. Next, we have publishing survey. Let's see what else all a publishing survey has. First, pilot surveys and tweak accordingly. Next, thoroughly test any question logic. 3. Spend time on the invitation. 4. A/B test different invitations. 5. Send out reminders. 6. Use tracking IDs. Then last, set a closing date. Let us see one by one what else all it means. First, a pilot survey and tweak accordingly. 3. Health. Once a survey is out in the wild, it's very hard to bring it back into competitive. This is why it's such a good idea to pilot a survey before publishing. This will provide an opportunity to find out if questions are being interrupted as you accept and to generally see whether the survey needs tweaking before being made available to a wider audience. Next, truly test any question logic. You usually only have one shot at getting a survey right. Make a mistake with the question logic, such as incidentally excluding the wrong set of participants or using the wrong question, skip logically, and your precious survey data could be in run. This is why it's really important to thoroughly test any question logic before publishing a survey. Next, spend time on the invitation. It means it should not think that when you wake up, your first thought of the day is, oh, I hope I get to fill out a survey today. Surveys are not exactly top of most people's list of things to do. So it's important that a survey invitation stands out and includes a clear call to action. If you are sending out any email invitation, pay particular attention to the subject line and, of course, the text of the email as with a good survey introduction. Keep the invitation relatively short and make sure that you answer the all important questions. Why should someone fill out this survey? For help writing a good subject line, check out Snap Surveys 7 Tips for Writing Great Email Subject Line. Next, A/B testing different invitations. A good way to determine the best invitation for a survey is to A/B test different variations. For example, you might use different subject lines, different emails, or even different incentives to find out which leads to the higher competition rate. Next, send out reminders. With email survey invitation, you tend to get an initial spike or activity as people acts on the email and then competitions gradually tail off until you get very few after a 3-4 days. A good way to increase competition rate is to send out reminders to anyone who has yet to complete the survey. Allow about a week before sending out a reminder so that you are not bombarding could be participants with emails. Next, use tracking IDs. Most survey tools allows you to use tracking IDs so that you can match an invitation with a completed survey. If you can use tracking IDs, it's a good idea to do so. This will allow you to track the efficiency of invitation and means that you don't have to recapture information that you might already know, such as someone's email address. Next, set a closing date. There is nothing like a deadline to include action. Even if you don't really have a closing date for a survey, it's a good idea to set one so that it's clear that could be participants must act soon. Next, information collection in the government. To avoid overburdening the public with federally response data collection, the Paperwork Reduction Act PRA requires that federal agency obtain Office of Management and Budget (OMB) approval before requesting or collecting most type of information from the public. So this is about what we had learned about the online survey. Let us let's summarize. We learned about online surveys. We learned about benefits of surveys, best practices for developing online surveys, how to create questions, planning surveys, structuring surveys, choosing question types, writing questions and options, styling the surveys, publishing the surveys. So this is what we had learned into the surveys, online surveys.